Welcome gamers to this episode on creating a world for Age of Wonders 4. So particularly with a gear, I guess advice for new players will be the way that we'll sort of structure this one. And there is a big trap here. There's something that actually whenever you get into the game, I know what you're going to be wanting to do with your worlds, and I'm going to suggest that you don't do it, and that is to add as many different things into it as possible. So anyway, let's get into it. To create a new world, you need to go into new game. And the starting point here is to then create the portal from the Mage Haven that your Godir will then sort of move through. The Godir are these sort of ascended beings that you sort of have in through here, which I covered in the last episode. So you end up with either official realms that you see down through this side. Now, some of them will come with DLCs with this little drop down through here. Some of them will also be then unlocked through the Pantheon. So there's an awful lot eventually to choose from. So Frozen Realm, for example, was one that came from an unlock in the Pantheon. I think that's the first one that you then end up getting. And then this one then adds in different sorts of parameters. You can see there when I hover over it, it's got like a coast, it's got frosting influence, it's a frozen realm, it's got Arctic blizzards, and it's got Domain of the Frost Queen. So these are all different aspects of the actual map itself. Now, I'm guessing that some of you will, if you haven't played the game, will be thinking, oh, is this an actual preset, pre-built map? And no, that's not the way Age of Wonders works. There's the maps, they used to be back way back in the day, but no, these are all randomly generated maps, and these are the parameters for generating the map. And so you don't know exactly what you're going to get. It's fantastic what they've actually done. It's a beautiful game. I absolutely love it. Actually, before I get started, special thank you to anyone who supports the channel, whether you be Patreon supporters, whether you be members here on YouTube, whether you have bought any merchandise at shop.DasTactic.com, or whether you've supported the channel through Ko-fi.com or what's the other one? My Nexus game store. Links in the description. I won't go into it in great depth, but again, thank you guys for the support. And look, a like and subscribe, comments really do help the channel, so please consider being involved that way as well, which is extremely helpful. Okay, let's get into it. So these are the preset realms. You can sort of hover over them and just get a bit of a feel of what's going on through here. So one of the many realms of Oberdoth. So Oberdoth is an infernal world ruled by demonic princes. So you can sort of look over these through here. So when it sort of says very few Godir can withstand Odir's infernal influence, the Godir again are the wizards. So wizards of the Pantheon who gather at Mage Haven are called Godir. There we go. We covered that in the last episode, but we've covered it in one sentence here in this particular episode. Anyway, each of these will have their own parameters. Now, you'll sort of notice that a lot of these have got like a lot of parameters. The ones at the top, the beginner scenario has only got one, which is Harmonious Lands. We've got Rise of the Godir, and through here, this is a Valley of Wonders. This one here has got like Ancient Ruins, Crystalline Abundances, and an Uninhabited Underground. By all means, hover over them to sort of see what you want to do. Now, if you're a new player, what I would suggest that you do is to, first of all, just start playing something very simply in Fields of Rebirth and play for maybe 10 turns. Just get used to the interface, get used to using the different sorts of units, get used to using what the units actually then go and do. So as well, like each actual unit will have very unique aspects about them, and so it does take a little bit of time to get used to them. They're in broad categories, but within the categories they can vary quite differently, and they can that will then adapt and transform during the course of the game as well. But I'll talk about that in the coming episodes. So Fields of Rebirth is a great one to just get used to what the game looks like, but it doesn't give you any tutorial information, so just be aware of that. I still think this is the best way to start, but only for a very limited time, just to get used to how the game actually does go and play. At that point, go and surrender wherever you are in that game and try to get some Pantheon points that way, because the Pantheon points come whether you surrender or win, either one of the two. If you just abandon and delete the save file, then you don't get any points, but you do want to get the points because you want the unlocks. Anyway, that's the so just a few turns there, like 10 turns in Field of Rebirth will just give you a feel for the game. If you play longer than that, that's fine as well, but I know that people often who play this scenario get a little bit lost with what the objectives of the game are, and because it doesn't explain that, because it's all open. It's open. It's an open world. Down through here, where you see like a little book icon, which is the Valley of Wonders, and so this is actually a story realm. Now this goes on as you go past through the first story realm. It then unlocks other story realms for you, and this one here is very much more like a tutorial where it explains things a little bit along the way. So I would suggest play 10 on this, 10 turns on this one to get used to the interface, and then start playing through the Valley of Wonders. Now, to be honest, I haven't played this. I have played a little bit of it just to sort of see what it's like, and it was good the way it explained things. It introduced different characters. If you used to play the old, particularly if you played Age of Wonders 2 way back in the day, you'll have some very nostalgic moments with different sorts of characters that appear in this version of the game. There's a lot of there's a lot of old characters that have come back and are now playable, or just appear and sort of like either your enemies or friends in the actual game itself. But this is a good way to learn the game, is the Valley of Wonders. But do that after you've actually had a bit of a feel and a bit of a play with it. So that's probably the one that you want to really start on. We're not going to do that for our run through. We are going to create our own realm, and that's going to be the rest of what we talk about right now. So you've got your official realms, which is generated by Triumph Studios for you, and by all means, these can be quite difficult, particularly as you sort of see like the higher tiers. Often these will actually have aspects where you have to then fight against very established AI forces, like the Ashen War, for example. This one here is coming from the DLC, but this one actually introduces 2 different groups of 3 dragons each, and so you've got 6 dragons in total in this particular one, and you have to then sort of try to create alliances. So you need to sort of then try to create alliances with one group and then defeat the other group. So it takes the basic game that we're going to be playing and extends it. So there's a lot of replay value in the game, and plus it's all random again. Like the map is random. You've got Spellborn Desert. So again, this is just tier 1. These will then just tend to be different scenarios with vanilla factions that you go up against. As you start to go through the tier 2 realms, again, you're just going to have things like Pretender Kings. This is going to then introduce some additional characters that you then need to then try to sort of work with in the actual world itself. And so you can start to then sort of pick and choose, further and further as you go through. Tier 3, we're going to end up with some quite difficult ways. Whoops, where is it? Tier 3 and through this side. We end up with some fairly difficult ways of actually sort of playing the game with different, like Curse of Undeath, where different units come back from the dead all the time. It really does change things a lot depending on what you then go and choose. But be careful, like some of these, like a tier 5 is going to have like a lot of really difficult stuff going on. And plus the Demon Prince is going to be like a massive character that you then, this is Caravar the Willbreaker, who is going to be sort of starting off, starts with a large throne city, 2 additional cities, so starts off a lot more advanced than where you actually are, and all of his dominions already got demon kin, which is actually a transformation essentially, which allows them to sort of be basically demons. So the game, as I say, has got incredible depth, and so you can set these things up. But let's go and create our own. As I say, don't go and play the high tier realms when you're just learning the game. Just either play these, as I say, these Fields of Rebirth just to get used to the game. Rise of Godir to get a little bit of a very loose story-driven tutorial, I guess, would be the way of sort of thinking about it. It will certainly give you hints as to what to think about and how to approach the game. I'm almost tempted to actually play that for this scenario, but I don't think I will. I think I'll let you guys just sort of muddle your way through that yourselves. We're going to go across now. When you design a realm, it then goes into your custom list. So you end up with a whole lot of different sorts of realms. I no longer bother naming them anymore. I just let them just be custom realm because I only tend to use them once, and then that's the end of it, really. Like you end up with a lot of them just yourself, however you want it to sort of establish. But let's go and create one of these. So you go and click on Create Realm. By the way, if you are not interested in world creation, I'm not going to be going through in any other depth anything else in this episode other than just creating a realm. So for some of you, I will see you later. For the rest of you, we'll just go through what to look for. But the big tip is with this, if you are actually going to be creating your own realm, just be aware the more stuff you add, the more difficult you're likely to make it for yourselves, and you may not even like the results that you get. So I'm going to suggest, let's just go to create realm. What I would suggest for your first game, if you are going to be sort of creating a realm, it's very tempting to go to customize and fill all of these different things, these realm traits up. You've got 8 slots. One of them you have to have, which is the geography. You need to tell the world what the geography of the world is going to go and be. I'll talk about this in just a minute. But just to cut to the chase, if you are going to be starting your first game, leave it the way it is. Don't add any of these. You don't need it. It will still create a beautiful world for you. It'll be perfectly balanced, so you don't have to worry about anything else with that as well. It'll have everything in there that you would be wanting for a standard game of Age of Wonders. You don't need all the little extras. The extras don't. It's not as if you're starting with a blank plate and you're then putting the food on the plate. You're starting off with already a meal, and the other things you add in will then just change the ingredients on your plate, but they'll be taking things away to put other things on. So that's sort of the way it works. On its own, it works very, very well. And for your first game, I would strongly suggest that you don't change any of these. But then, as you start to sort of progress, then just start to experiment with them. But don't do too much, because the more you do, the more weird and more difficult the world or the portal is that you're going to then be creating. So let's just go through I'll come back to these in just a minute. The realm settings, you've either got like player distance. This really dictates how big the world is going to be. So if you've got close and you've got like a 2-player game, it's going to be a very, very small map. If you've got far and you've got 9 players, it's going to be a very, very large map. And so the size of the map is really the number of players times the distance, essentially, to create like a bigger map. Now, for your first game, I find the sweet spot for getting number of players is 4. Actually, I really quite like that one. I don't know why the game goes to 7, but I find 4 to be quite a nice number. It means you can get through and get a victory relatively early, like as in still take you a fairly long time. So it's still a challenge, but it's at least it's not. It doesn't go on for too long. And again, if you do choose close, it's going to be difficult because you're going to be right on top of the other players. I would suggest, even though standard is the default, I would suggest going to far for your first game. The difficulty down through here, I like playing it on hard personally, but if it's your first couple of games, play it on easy or relaxed. This is just going to make life a little bit easier for you. I'll play it on normal though for when we play it. The turn system, you've either got classic turns or simultaneous turns. They've always had simultaneous turns, or they have since Age of Wonders 2, which I used to love it back in Age of Wonders 2, but I haven't played it since then because computers were slow back in the day. So you had time to end your turn, and if you'd made a mistake, you very quickly grab the unit and then do something with it, either run away or do an attack, do something in the simultaneous turns. It gave you almost like a free go at the very, very start of the turn. But classic turns, I would advise that that's the way that you play it. It just means that each player will play one after the other. If you're playing multiplayer, then play simultaneous turns. That way everyone can sort of play at the same time, and you're not waiting around for too long. I think I'll just call this realm tutorial. Actually, I'll call it tutorial. And then we can go through the other bits and pieces. The portal visual is really just, what you're sort of seeing. Let's just leave it. If it's a default world, that looks about right. Actually, that looks pretty good. Now, you also then have advanced settings. Let's just talk about the settings. Then we'll come back to the realm traits afterwards and talk about those. The advanced settings, it will then remember what you've selected down through here. So you can sort of do anything. Like once you click on advanced settings, you can't go back to simple settings because you can then override certain things that the game has then sort of done. You'll notice that it doesn't actually have the difficulty settings on here because they've now been applied across these other 3 tabs. So we've got the factions. Now the factions, you can sort of see through here, this is the AI difficulty. We had set that one to normal. If I make this one, say, easy, it's then going to change the easiness the ease back and through here as well for the different for the AI teams that do come through. I'll just leave it back on normal though. You can also then have custom, will then mean that you sort of are changing other things around. Now you've got 3 different tick boxes up through here, check boxes. You've got custom rulers. So if you hover over, enable or disable the AI picking custom rulers. Now the custom rulers are the rulers that you created. So you may not want them in the game. You may, if you know, by default it's on. Let's just turn them off for now. Rulers are generated. If you decide to actually click this one on, it means that they're going to procedurally generate different rulers for you to play against. There won't be the stock standard. Now, I would strongly suggest if you have played Age of Wonders 2 in particular, leave that off and maybe turn that one off as well, so that it then chooses from the list of players or the AI players, and you'll find that you come across a lot of the old favourites from Age of Wonders 2, which is fantastic. It's very, very nostalgic. Now you also have a teams game. Actually, this is, I don't know why it's done that. I didn't choose teams. Let's just unclick the teams. Maybe I clicked on that one accidentally. I don't think I had that one selected. Anyway, that's usually off by by default. And so you can play a teams game. And again, this can be a good way to learn, to actually have an AI almost to sort of compare yourself against. So you'd be on team 1 and they'd be on team 2, and of course you can change these as well. One thing I like to do is actually have myself versus everyone else on their own team, so it's 1 versus 3 or whatever else it might actually be. But anyway, that's, again, you can sort of change, you can tweak the difficulty to sort of choose or to play a particular way that you want it to play. Anyway, let's just turn off the teams. Game flow is going to be essentially like you've got a turn timer. This is going to force you to play within a certain time frame. Again, more for multiplayer than for single player. The game speed, this is sort of like how fast or slow your cities will develop, how fast or slow your research will develop. I actually prefer slow, but I'm going to play it on normal in this particular playthrough. Starting conditions are going to be normal again through here as well. Again, you can actually go and change it so that you've got easy, where you start off with more resources and a larger army, or hard, where you start off with fewer resources and a smaller army, depending on how you want to sort of then play the game. I'll just leave that on normal for this particular run through. The world threat is sort of like passive, so enemy armies are reduced in strength and increase in strength over time at a slow rate. Free cities and infestations will not send attacking armies. So this becomes a very well, it's not hard anyway, to be honest, and hopefully this tutorial will then sort of get you geared up to understand what these things actually do. I'm just going to play it on normal, and this means that free cities and infestations will send regular attacking armies against you, but we're going to be playing in a way that we're going to be able to cope with that anyway, because one of the things with the game, you do have to have a very different mindset when you play the game, where rushing and quick expansion are not really what you're trying to do in the game. You are trying to consolidate to a large degree. And there's no rush to expand. So, I mean, there is a little bit, but we'll get into that when we actually start the actual game itself. Now, the victory conditions, you've got 4 different ways of having victory at this point in time. This may change, again, depending on the different expansion packs or updates or anything else, but you've got the score, which I tend to usually turn off because it does shut the game, it stops the game at the actual time that you set. So, slow is a 200 turn limit, normal is 150 turns, fast is 100 turns, or disabled. I usually disable it just so it doesn't automatically just stop at the 150. I find that most games last between 95 and 110 turns, somewhere in around there, so normal should still be okay. I'll just leave it there for now, but that may annoy you if you are really enjoying the game and you're just playing slowly and you end up getting to the 150 turn limit and then all of a sudden the game just ends. There is no way around that when that actually happens, and once you set this one up, that's what it does do. Maybe we'll play this on disabled, actually. Let's go that way. You've then got expansion victory. So this one here is essentially the military victory. So this is achieved by owning this expansion victory is by controlling a set number of provinces in the world, and so that's going to be something that, again, I haven't really ever got to the point where that kicks in, not effectively anyway. So leave it on. As I say, it hasn't really done anything for me. Magic victory, I have achieved one of these. This is something that nothing I tend to just go for domination victories, really. But the magic victory means that you've got to then build certain buildings in your realm and then defend them for 15 turns to then get the magic victory. The allied victory is when you basically are just going to be winning it, particularly if you're playing with teams. But if you're just playing with a standard game, and we're not going to be playing with teams, which means we are going to have diplomacy, we can get alliances. And if we're in an alliance with another player and either one of us wins, then the alliance wins. So I'll leave that one on as well. Now, the hero settings, Hero Resurgence is by default auto combat only. This came in Age of Wonders 3. And what this means is that if you do an auto battle and your hero in the actual battle dies, if it's an auto battle and you still win the battle, but your hero had died in it, your hero will come back with basically minimal hit points. So it just means that your hero doesn't die. The old way of playing it used to be that it was basically never. That was the default. Never automatically resurrects a hero. But in this case, if it's auto combat only, it just means that when you do auto combat, if you win the combat, your hero will then not die. So that way, at least you keep hold of your heroes. Your heroes are incredibly important. They are incredibly important. Okay, so we'll do a separate episode on heroes and maybe even different ones on the different types of heroes. But anyway, that's the game flow. And then in combat, you've essentially got like how the game wants you to sort of look at combat. And so you've got combat versus the AI. It will always ask how you want to do it. You can actually go in and always do auto combat, always do manual combat, whatever you want to be doing. I'm just going to have always ask against other humans, like in a multiplayer game. Again, always ask whether you want to go into combat or not. Observe manual combat. So when location is visible, you can actually have this one here, like always or never, however you want that to sort of then work out. You can actually watch and see other combat, which is cool. Tactical idle timer is off, so set the speed at which turns will be played in tactical combat. Again, more for multiplayer, and because there's strategic combat, which is the main map, and then tactical combat, which is really for me the nuts and bolts of the game. This is where the game really does shine, is the tactical combat of Age of Wonders, which I think it makes it difficult for players, but hopefully you'll be comfortable with that as we go through the series. Enable combat retries will be on always. Now, what this one means is that you have the option to retry, and I really love that they've done this. It's basically save scumming encouraged by the developer. Which I really do think this is one of the best ways of learning Age of Wonders, and we're going to do that in this series as well. I'm going to show you different approaches to the same battle, because this is how you learn super fast when you actually play the game with and save scumming and just learning things as like what if you move one extra move, what's that going to do? If you fire from a certain location, what's that going to do? All these things have a big bearing. Like the battles are beautiful, the way it sort of works out in Age of Wonders. They always have been. They've been incredible. And then enable a combat restart. So enables the option. So during your combat, you can always just go back and restart the battle from the start if you're not happy with the way that It's not so much the. One thing I find with this game, I should just preface this and say, it's not about the random number generation that's going to do your head in. It's going to be your placement of your army. It's going to be your movement of your army and what you decide to attack. They're going to be the things, and they're all under your control. So if you don't like the way that you've controlled the army, restart and just see what happens if you don't go as aggressively, or if you go more aggressively, what's going to actually happen to your results. It's a good way to learn the game. Anyway, that's what that actually does mean. And so we just go and confirm. And at that point, we've now generated, if we go back across and just go back out again. Now we called this one, and I'll just go back and just cancel that and go back out again. If we go into the realms and go to custom, we have now going to have a one called tutorial, which has got just the continents. We didn't put anything else in there. Actually, one thing we didn't do was I didn't show you the other aspects. Now, this is now the one that's saved in through here, so I'm just going to leave that one through there. And so that's one we just created. I can go and edit this as well. If I can then go and override things. Now, you'll notice that when we first sort of start, if I go back again, if I even go and sort of choose custom and then just go back down to my starting location with tutorial, and then go and click on select, I still get to choose these basic settings. I can still go to advanced settings and still override them for the game itself. So I can sort of do them at any particular point in time. And what we can do, one thing I didn't actually go through with that last lot of what we were going through, was these realm traits. So I'm going to do that in the next episode. If you are not interested in these, just skip over that. And so skip the next episode if you're not interested in actually going through how these actually impact the world. But I'll spend a bit of time just going through and showing you what you get with each of the actual setups. Not all of them, but just a little bit of a mix and match at the back end of the next episode. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll be back then to go through these various realm traits, which really have a massive impact on the game itself.